Hi, my name is Tibor Shanto. I'm a principal with Renbor Sales Solutions, and you can find us at sellbetter.ca. Value is one of those concepts that comes up in almost every sales conversation, but what you'll also find is that as a result of that, it's also very undefined. What I find is you can talk to 5 different salespeople and get 7 different definitions of value because the first two will change their mind based on what the next three say. So what we find is if the goalpost is constantly moving, it's difficult to make headway. So what we like to do is work with our clients in really focusing on an actionable definition of value. And the reason I say actionable is that in sales, really success is about execution. Everything else is more or less just talk. So you need to be able to action, not just define something, but you need to be able to action it. So from our point of view, what we work with our clients is having a definition that helps their customers remove barriers or hurdles or cross gaps between where they are and where their objectives are. And as a result of that, we find that there's not only much better conversations, but more conversations because it moves away from this notion of do you have a pain, do you have a need, do you need a solution, to more how we can get you closer to your objectives. And the wonderful thing is that every company has objectives, whether they're small, large, new, old, or what have you, whether they're in pain, not in pain, everybody has objectives. So if you can relate to that, they're much more forward-looking. And as a result of that, there's a great attraction. And I think you can actually deliver value and value the way that the customers expect it as opposed to the way we define it from our point of view. Commonly speaking, again, rejections and most of the time, or objections most of the time, are a response to the circumstances as opposed to anything specific that people say. They're trying to get back to work. They're trying to pack 16 hours into a 10-hour day. So what they're doing with the rejection is really responding to the interruption, not really responding to your message. And as a result of that, because they've had a lot of practice, because they get a lot of calls through the course of the week, through the course of the year, they generally land, what I find about 80% of the time, you'll find one of 5 of the most common objections. And those would be status quo, we're happy, we're good the way things are now, we're not interested. They'll tell you that they have no time, whether it's in the current context, that they don't have time for the next 6 months, a year, or whatever the case might be. They'll sometimes tell you that they've had a bad experience with a similar vendor or similar type of thing. And then lastly, they'll tell you to send them some material, whether it's an email, a brochure, or whatever the case might be. So 80% of the time I find that they go to one of those, they become accustomed, and it is really a knee-jerk or a conditioned response because it's worked on the last several hundred, if not thousand calls that they've gotten. So if as a salesperson you can A, learn to expect that those are coming, right, and not be surprised by them, and then B, be ready to take those and manage them and transition them into a conversation, you'll begin to have greater traction, which will lead to an ongoing conversation, which, if executed right, could lead to your next sale. From my perspective, and I'm sure this is one of those things where if you ask 5 salespeople, you probably get 5 different answers. But for me, the one that I find not necessarily the most difficult to overcome, but maybe the most annoying because it's neither here nor there, is when they ask you to send them some material. Because there's a question of are they really looking for the material and so on. It's a polite way of sending us off and so forth. So I find that while I don't like that objection, it also allows me to have a little bit of fun with it. I remember I had one VP of sales about a year ago, and he said to me, I'm not interested. And I said, haven't heard that before. What do your people say now? And, he had a good belly laugh, and I got the appointment. I tried it on another guy, and he hung up on me. So, you just don't know how or if it's going to work. And I find for me, not so much difficult, but maybe more, it's the most ambiguous one. And when I read that 75% of customers who switch from one vendor to another, it really got me thinking and talking to customers and talking to people who left me for other providers and so on. It really opened my eyes that I was focusing on the wrong end of the discussion. And instead of talking about my value proposition, it's much better to talk about what they're trying to achieve and focus the whole conversation on their objectives. And again, I don't want to pretend that it always guarantees that it's going to lead to a buy, but it is going to lead to a conversation. What you want to do is have some critical things defined in advance. So which part of the market will benefit most from what you're doing, and again, benefit based on the value definition that we gave earlier. Segment that market and then be persistent. I think a lot of salespeople tend to give up way too early, and by extension, their companies end up giving up way too early. So I think if you were in the presentation upstairs, I talked about a pursuit plan. So having that pursuit plan is important, because otherwise you're just not going to have the traction that you want to have. So it's that persistence and definition and targeting, to me, are the key. I work with B2B companies. Our track record has been on helping them get more prospects, more activity in the pipeline, more accurate forecasts, and we work with them on a couple of different bases, either on a specific program if they need help with prospecting, or how to execute the sale once they're in front of the customer, or a lot of the work that I do I would describe as being an outsourced VP of sales, where I help them design, develop their sales process, implement it, and most importantly, help somebody within the company be accountable for the success and the ongoing success of that process. So if anybody has an interest in improving their sales, don't hesitate to call. And the one thing I can guarantee you is that it will be about execution.